Hi, David Webb, City of Worcester, regarding 14B, Colorio's, the homeless...
It's Council Colorio.
Sorry, of course, thank you. Councilor Colorio's, let's get this year started off right. Great to see you all back, except not most of you. Councilor Colorio's homeless issue in the library, frankly, short version, city doesn't need to worry about it. Everything the person before me said. The library is a great resource. Let's keep funding it. Let's keep it great. That being said, if the city did something about the actual issue, if we created more shelters, we've got one. It was approximately a third, if I'm not mistaken, of what the estimated number of shelter beds that had been displaced. So short version, there's not nearly enough beds. If the city wants to do something about it, it really, really should. The 200 beds that just put in place down the road are about a quarter of what the city actually needs, and those numbers are based on old data. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So if you're ready, we can go to the online. So the first call-in user is David Webb. I'm going to try to mute the resident now.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name, city of residence, and the item you're calling on.
Sure. Yes, hello. This is David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm here tonight in support of agenda items 9G and 9C. First and foremost, I'd like to thank City Manager Eric Batista for expanding the number of beds available last week. And thank you, Councilor King, for this item. As every source other than The Guardian mentioned last week, trans people have been declined at the temporary winter shelter. To be clear, this is something the city management should and could have accounted for. According to the proposed guidelines for homelessness presented by Worcester in 2022, there was an increased number of trans and non-binary individuals who would require shelter space 2018 to 2020. This is something the agency running the shelter, SMOC, should systematically prepare for. South Middlesex Opportunity Council's mission statement is that they will improve equity, wellness, and quality of life for diverse individuals. It talks about building a community of support and inclusion and creating awareness to combat poverty. That's not what happened here. Thank you to Councilor O'Hara for not just putting his salary to great use, but for addressing the need for implementing de-escalation strategies. The city needs a better way to respond to the homeless than with armed forces telling them to scatter. Having a temporary winter shelter helps no one in 3 months, while there's more and more people who can't afford rent here by the month. I call on the city council and the city manager to not just ensure there are safe places for unhoused trans people, but to create more shelters in Worcester. They need housing, not handcuffs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Next.
Hi, David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm here about a few different things today. First and foremost, I'm going to tag on to the two people who spoke before me. I'm speaking in support of 9C. Yes, let's give 1340 from the Worcester Public Library to the Worcester Talking Book Library. This sounds great for everyone. So the person before them mentioned a police chief interim situation. So long as we don't give them a 50K raise and commit them for 2 years without doing any kind of search, I think moving forward with that search would be a good thing. I'm here in support of Jeff Killebrew's Worcester Renaissance Project plan. I've been listening to it for a while, and I hope all of you pay attention and listen. He has put in a lot of research, and this sounds like it could make a very good impact for Worcester. So we should. And lastly, don't worry, I will keep it under 2 minutes. In support of 12A, Councilor Constantina Luke's request that the city manager the city solicitor provide city council with a legal opinion regarding the process of institution of residential rent control program and the resulting impact of implementing such a program. This was tabled under privilege September 17th, 2019, and then again September 24th, 2019. And every single time someone says whose fault it is that we have an opioid crisis and everything else that's going on in the city, I like to think about what the city has had an opportunity to do and didn't do. And there's a lot of things we voted against. This one just hasn't been voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, David. If there's anyone else who would like to speak that's in...
Anybody else?
David Webb, City of Worcester. Yeah, the 311 app seems to be like many things in Worcester. It functions so that the constituents feel happier, like they're being heard, like they have a way to reach you. But I've heard from many different places that it appears as if, and they've heard from other people, that their tickets are closed out immediately. So yeah, fix the app, make it functional. I don't know what you're trying to use it for, but it obviously doesn't work. Okay, anyways, firstly, I'm here in support of Councillor King's item 11A, Let's Make Black History Month official. I'd say I don't know why we haven't already, but like many things around here, the answer is probably Irish pride. Secondly, in support of 10D, Councillor Wynn's request for City Manager Eric Batista to create and provide a 2 to 5 year plan that supports and addresses the matter of the unhoused in Worcester. The request calls for creation of year-long shelters as well as a list of community partners and local resources. Additionally, the reason we need this plan is not just because the city obviously is only going to get more prohibitively expensive. It's because what the city is currently doing makes the problem worse. We're asking the city management what their plan is, but they've made it clear that they think hunting homeless people solves the problem. Instead of actually helping the unhoused, in March last year, City Manager Batista announced expansion plans for the Quality of Life Task Force, beginning with the appointment of Dan Cahill to Director of Constituent Services. The claim was that his team would lead beautification efforts and other enhancement initiatives that will be felt and seen across the city. There are more than 400 homeless people in Worcester and less than 100 beds. The 60 beds that the city provided are in a temporary winter shelter, which goes away after March and doesn't solve anything long term. Instead of giving resources to the unhoused or organizations assisting them, the city has established a Quality of Life Task Force. Quality of life. The 2024 budget calls for expanding the Quality of Life Task Force by 4 Department of Park nuisance inspectors and 4 Worcester police officers. According to the 2022 homeless guidelines, encampments are supposed to receive a certain number of days' notice, as well as actual written notices, the same as any other legal eviction. The city has demonstrated multiple times in the past month it does not follow these guidelines. The city is already planning to hire more people to hunt the homeless, so please let's get that plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker. Your name, city.
Maria, your phone?
Name, city, residence.
David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm here about a few things. First and foremost, in support of 8H allowing tenting. I think today you guys have a unique opportunity in front of you because you have both the problem identified as well as a solution offered. And if you actually look closely at the impact rather than how people feel and what some people are complaining about for their aesthetics, their neighborhood, all these people actually want is to keep their community in one place. Anyways, okay, so also in support of Councillor Wynn and Councillor Hedget's affordable, short version is that one. I have 10H, I believe. But most importantly, 939, quality of life. If this was about trash, you guys would be having a conversation with the DPW. Last week at the Parks Department, Assistant Commissioner Antonelli Jr. said that the parks only effectively functions as a biohazard cleanup, like ServPro. If this was about trash, we should hire one of our local BIPOC-owned companies to handle the trash, not have an agency depart. Anyway, so as I read through the attachment on, what was it, 939A, as you read through the attachment, it doesn't actually mention the unhoused, it doesn't mention the homeless, it does what the quality of life purpose is supposed to do, eradicate the homeless. So in that thing, it tells you what they do, it gives you a lot of doublespeak for they build connections with the community, they pay attention to the, let's be clear, you say neighborhoods first, it is homeowners first. Anyways, I did not actually expect this to be so perfect, but if you actually look at this, you'll be able to, sorry about that. You'll be able to see Dan Cahill, the person that Eric Batista proudly endorses again, is doing what he does most of his career, which is work with the police to ensure that the homeless do not have a place to stay. And in this picture, you'll see that he's surrounded by about 10 cops, and later that night there were about 20 who removed about 12 camps, according to the police reports, that were not harming anyone. The most dangerous thing mentioned in any of the police reports was space heaters, which, to be completely honest, I was setting up. So where I'm going with this is they only arrested protesters, but the reason they expanded the shelter that night was to allow for people to be arrested, because otherwise it is an Eighth Amendment violation, and the cops seem to know that. Amy Peterson, Eric Batista's chief of staff, was in contact with the person who gave the order that night. Anyways, This picture, if you see right here, it is
Thank you.
Dan Cahill, who, if you look right behind me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? The next one?
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is David Webb. I'm going to try to mute the resident now.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, promise I won't be racist. My name is David Webb. I'm a resident of the city of Worcester. Quality of life for whom? I'm here in support of items 11K, 11L, and 11D. Mostly, I am in support of the city manager providing a report with the breakdown of the quality of life, so-called team task force, time spent between nuisance properties interacting with the unhoused population, aka hunting them. However, I am also in support of Councilor Toomey's motions. I would like the city manager to investigate the potential of using undersized, unbuildable parcels for the purpose of encampments, as well as invite representatives from local organizations working with the unhoused to meet with meetings regarding the growing issues in the city. Lastly, to be clear, I did not imply anything. I'm stating the well-documented fact that the Quality of Life Task Force has hunted the homeless since their inception in 2015. They're an interdepartmental scapegoat, seeking quality of life for whom, Mr. Batista? Lastly, as far as lifeguards, sounds like last year we hired cops instead. That obviously doesn't solve anything. Let's do anything differently. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. What's your name, see your residence and item number?
David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm here to talk about a few things, most importantly in support of item 10DD, the sanctioned encampment by the City of Worcester. As Samantha and other people have spoken about, it is not just necessary, but this is the best implementation of it. I think it's worth acknowledging that today we have the city's lack of constables and the way they handle or don't handle evictions, as well as busking on tonight's agenda. And the reason I say that is because we've got a lot of the problems to be discussed at the same time as we've got some of the solutions to be discussed. And it would be great if this city started focusing on solutions. And eradicate's not a word I would normally use in this discussing the unhoused community, but someone else earlier did, and I realized, and I'm going to parrot back some of City Manager Eric Batista's words, let's eradicate the issues, not the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Hi, David Webb, City of Worcester. We've got a lot of different accountability on the table tonight. Let's start with 7K. Citizens request that City Council hold the expectation that Worcester Police will enforce the law, both criminal statutes and their obligations under the Police Reform Act as to evictions as described in the attached document. I haven't read the attached document yet, but I've witnessed why the City of Worcester might not give too many why the City of Worcester might not, the City of Worcester administration might not care about the fact that landlords are not using constables. The city itself doesn't bother to use constables. The city itself doesn't bother to use the correct address when sending things. And the city doesn't really care about people who can't afford to pay their rent or their mortgage. The city cares about taxpayers. And so mostly I want to draw attention to Councilor Toomey's request to the City of Worcester does hereby call upon the state legislature to fully enforce and enact any additional required legislation to ensure full sentencing be mandatory for the illegal possession of firearms. Any councilor who votes to support that, but not to hold the police accountable, is a scumbag, with all due respect. And then separately, 839 A, B, and C. As the first page of your report states, needs improvement. The standards that they have set are not being met, and the standards they have set are too low. It is also really difficult to actually get accurate assessments based on the limited information they are actually providing. And as someone who has spent way too much time going back and forth with the Public Records Office, they are not forthcoming with the little bit of data they actually do retain and write down. Police reports are written to support their narrative, and that's the end of that. You have to recognize that it is in their best interest to fight every single thing that actually fights towards accountability, because it gets in the way of them doing their job. Lastly, specifically on C, the authorization to file a petition with the general court, which would exempt the positions of chief of police and deputy chief of police in the city of Worcester from civil service law. As much as I love to complain about the current chief, I think most of the problems are from the one before them. Where I'm really going with this is, I think opening it up to people outside of people who only, let's get out, expanding the search to past people who have done civil service
wrap
law
up your
exam.
comments?
Yeah, sure. Let's have someone in charge who's been to a therapist.
Okay.
David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm going to try and keep it quick, but I've got a bunch to talk about tonight. I am in support of 8A, that the city manager review trainings undertaken by the staff at the Worcester Public Library and encourage municipal staff to take said trainings. You all don't have to start accepting cap payments in lieu of back taxes, but that would be really great. I'm in support of 8D. We all know I'm not exactly WPT's biggest fan, but I think accepting people who have done some emotional development and growth to be cops might improve some of the statistics they don't bother keeping. Maybe we'd also have less immature retaliatory behavior. I'm also, of course, in support of 9I and 9J. Let's find out how Mr. Killebrew can put wayfinder markers for busking similar to the ones used by Polar Park and the downtown bid around Worcester. Let's get Worcester more lively. 12A and 12B, Councilor Clorio's request to find out how much it costs the taxpayers to allow anyone at the library. This is a despicable line of questioning, and we should be ashamed of even asking it. Regarding 10D, the rental registry program, if they wanted landlords to sign up, they'd make it free. This is prohibitive, unnecessary, inefficient, and doesn't really explain why the inspectional services hasn't been doing their job for decades. Gage Street was inspected multiple times. This is just Worcester continuing to prioritize developers over anyone else. Also, the database doesn't actually verify any of the contact information provided. In support of 10E, we need larger recycling bins too, not just ones that close and don't destroy when the DPW tosses them on the ground. As for the racial equity audit, it confirmed what we all know. Blue takes care of blue before it takes care of you, but in Worcester it doesn't even do that well. Please send it back to the manager for community input. The data and recommendations fall drastically short of what is actually needed. The reason we have so little to show after 4 years is because they kept so little information to hold them accountable.
Next speaker. Name and city of residence.
Yes, hello. This is David Webb, City of Worcester. Thank you, Mayor Petty, for the proclamation of this Public Health Week, despite how you voted a few weeks ago to keep homelessness illegal in Worcester. First and foremost, regarding 8I, public bathrooms. Last week at City Hall, the toilet downstairs was missing a seat. This obviously isn't a priority for anyone, even at City Hall. But city councilors and constituents love to whine about the unhoused community using the bathroom places other than a bathroom. And they use that complaint to argue for eradicating them. And like I've said before at City Council, let's eradicate the issues, not the people. This is a really simple way for the city manager to actually do something positive for the unhoused community that you guys are supposed to recognize this week. So please, I'm in support of 8I. 8J, suspending the rental registry and opening it up to public hearings. Arthur Meridian is my shop's landlord, and I am so glad he filed this petition. I think it's wild how much you can implement without discussing it in front of the constituents. There's really some interesting things buried in agenda items that most people don't know how to click through. As many landlords will, it's inspectional services, no trouble sending notices to us. $300 a day is prohibitive, but this is just a way for Worcester to decide who can afford to be a landlord or not. $9,000 a month is prohibitive, not an incentive. If they want every landlord to register, they would make it free. More importantly, the city assessor's office has this information, the goal of communicating with them. That is a management issue. You've had rent control on the agenda for years. Discuss that instead of doing things that will raise the cost for tenants living further. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker. Yeah, that's it then?
First and foremost, the landlord registry is certainly a good thing. Like the follow-up, the invasion of privacy, the Anyways, I think it would be intelligent to make it free, especially if it's mandatory, partially for the reasons listed by the person who sounded legal earlier. Most importantly, I am strongly in support of item 11A, requesting that Eric Batista request Christopher Spencer provide City Council with a report of departmental practices. I don't see why anyone thinks a database will resolve existing management and training issues. The actual reason Gage Street and many issues happened isn't lack of awareness or lack of contact information. It's lack of responsibility and poor management in the Department of Inspectional Services. Getting in a place every 5 years doesn't change that. It just generates more work. That being said, I'm not in a position to hate on Worcester too hard right now. Yesterday, a coordinated effort between the Worcester Police and Fire Departments, as well as code enforcement, shut down a nightclub operating out of my building. So that brings me back to my original objection to the whole thing. This wouldn't be necessary if the city had interdepartmental communication, if the city actually listened to its renters or landlords. Regarding items 11B through G, I am in support of them because clarity and transparency is important. I'm not actually against the registry, but despite having 2 years to discuss, plan, and prepare, it doesn't seem to have been well implemented, communicated, or thought out. This is a result of management issues, not the solution.
Thank you. Is your name, city residence, and item number?
David Webb, City of Worcester. Tonight, I'm here loudly in support of agenda items 8B, 8O, and 8P. 8B, request for street to be named for Daniel Gaskin. 8O, requesting an investigation into our city's systemic racism and that we have public meetings for it, that conversation be public and transparent, which brings me to the next point. 8P, that the City Council request Eric Batista create public access to information about the Quality of Life Task Force, including its missions, duties, policies. You've used the term quality of life, you as in Mr. Mayor Petty, have used the term quality of life in a proclamation both this week and last, and it notably has a different meaning than when Worcester does it. I've spent a significant number of time on the City Public Records Request portal, and it's hard to find anything about this interdepartmental scapegoat beyond the people's names. Recently, I did the math to learn that in 2023, we paid $950,000 in payroll alone for the Quality of Life Task Force. I see the unhoused community's drastic growth as a direct metric on the success of our city administration. The worse infrastructure, the worse supports, the less accessibility, the more apathetic the people in power, the larger the number of people who are displaced, who are struggling to survive. After multiple allegations that the city administration and Quality of Life Task Force is hunting the homeless, our competent city manager talked to us about intention and focusing on people versus issues. But the issues did not cost us $950,000 last year in payroll alone. The people did. The Quality of Life Task Force did. How do we know they did a good job? Do you know if they did a good job? What is their job? How are we supposed to discuss this when you won't be transparent about their job? Let's be honest about what their role is here, because if it's trash pickup, let me tell you, I walked up both Chandler and Grafton today, and we've been able to see it all winter too, but now you can outright smell that they haven't been doing their job. We cannot make it about intention like City Manager Batista would like us to. We have to look at the city's actual impact. And the city's well-documented actual impact is simply displacing communities that are just trying to survive and get on their feet. Almost done. While pretending to be trash pickup. While calling a population that we failed a nuisance. If we want to actually address problems, we've got to stop pretending there isn't an internal problem. And on that note, item 915, the process and laws
You
around
can wrap it up, please. Thank you. You're over your time.
around renewal of the cable contract. Super excited to hear what our Muppet attorney thinks about this one.
Thank you.
David Webb, Worcester. First and foremost, 8V, 20 million from the school budget, 163 people laid off, entire programs uncertain. This is why things are hidden in attachments. Let's not waste much time on Councillor Bergman's current special interest. Just because he's fixated doesn't mean we need to be. No on the silly waste of time 10D and 11O. Yes on 10H, get us a report on if the Department of Inspectional Services is even able to perform an inspection every 5 years. Yes on 10K, get us information on efforts being made to address wage gaps in the city. Yes on 10O, get a report on why employees leave the city of Worcester when providing exit interviews. Why is this not already done? Yes on 11A, yes and on 11B.
Let's prioritize crashes at Park and Mill Street and Newton Rotary instead of wasting time on Mill Street. Yes on 11C, invite CMHA to discuss evictions in the city. Yes on 11D, get a report on human rights complaints related to landlord-tenant issues. Yes on 11F, have the Finance and School Committee meet to avoid issues like 8V. Yes on 11H and I and G, holistic safety initiatives and arrest diversion strategies for the city's youth. Yes on 11J, information on if ShotSpotter has any useful impact. Since I have an extra 45 seconds, I'd like to take it to emphasize that we should focus on things like science and logic and data and not listen to Councilor Bergman's fear-mongering.
Excuse me, that's on the call for. Next speaker, please.
The fear-mongering is worth acknowledging. Other people have. David Webb, City of Worcester. No on 10A, 15E, 23C, 23D, and of course no on silly 23B. Yes on 8Y, 8BB, 10B, 10C, 10H, 10R, 10T, 10U, 10X, 10Y, 11D, 11H, 11J, 11N, 11S, 12A, 13E, and 13F. Yes on 10L, please ensure we improve the Worcester Police Department's access to mental health. Yes on 10M, please consider the data showing that ShotSpotter is an unreliable, prejudiced waste of money. Yes on 23F to see what type of arrests ShotSpotter has actually led to. No on 23G, seeking an excuse to expand ShotSpotter due to lack of current data supporting it. And yes on 8CC to not renew ShotSpotter or their automatically problematic dispatch software, to use those funds for good local youth development initiatives. 13G at Food Map, if only there was a machine that looked for information, maybe a search engine. Lastly, please file 13A. Please do not vote to extend the city manager contract. Homelessness has worsened. Cost of living is at an all-time high. Residents are pleading for trash bins. His new transportation department may have to undo the great work they've done on Mill Street. Let's do a search this time. Let's find a qualified person to create actual accountability and actual sustainability. Thank you.
Next speaker. Anybody else?
David Webb, City of Worcester. You guys had 2 years to plan Mill Street and the rental registry, but we went until midnight last night and started an hour and a half early today. Does the city feel well managed? Does it seem like people know what their job title is and how to do it? It was pointed out to me last week that if Worcester made data-based decisions, if Worcester did evaluations and then made determinations based on the findings of those evaluations, we would be getting both a new chief of police and a new city manager in the next half year. If instead we keep doing things the way they've always been done, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. We have 2 years of data now. We can learn from our mistakes. Streets weren't plowed consistently this winter. They're riddled with potholes now. The DEI all of the positions remain vacant, which means there are still 7 spots open on both the LGBTQ and African Affairs Advisory Commissions. He did not do anything about crisis pregnancy centers when the council voted to prohibit deceptive medical practices. Our checkbooks are closed, citing cybersecurity concerns that could be fixed with basic technical education. Our traffic violence, don't blame the roads, blame the people, has increased, and while his new Department of Transportation might be the only department that operates based on data and best practices, it still ran into significant issues due to purchasing practices of the city. Cost of living is at an all-time high. Residents are still pleading for trash bins. Look around you. Does this city feel well managed? I understand that data can be scary and confusing, but there's a better way to do this than going with the person picked by the last guy. We can get away from perpetuating our institutional problems and do an actual search this time. I yield my 15 seconds.
Thank you. Anybody else?
David Webb, City of Worcester. Regarding 915A, changing the constables from 1-year instatements that require city manager approval to 3 years without needing his approval, I think it's important that the people acting with any authority of law, especially around a situation Chief Saucier has told us his hands are tied, are properly vetted. And it's interesting that while so many things in the city are difficult, what you're prioritizing streamlining is the ability to evict people.
Constables serve papers, but they're also the face of evictions, something the city has heard, something this council has heard and discussed multiple times. This is a continuation of a concerning trend from our city management of streamlining accountability avoidant practices. Signatures are something there are many different software options for and is not a complication to digitizing processes. The reason to remove a signature is to remove accountability, not time or efficiency. 10M, the newest proposition to address Worcester's trash crisis, monthly street sweeper and leaf blower cleanup. It seems we've repurposed the quality of life to no longer hunt the unhoused, and now they're city manager's clean team doing neighborhood cleanups. We've got the business improvement districts keeping downtown nice, the Chamber of Commerce Green Corps keeping individual things nice. We've got expensive yellow bags that break, $2,000 fines to criminalize homelessness, local businesses offering weekly bin pickups, shout out to Cruise Contracting, local artists repurposing it. There was a recent Telegram article. Why do we have city councilors asking the city to use leaf blowers to pick up litter? Can't we just get trash bins? Yes on 12C, honorary street naming after Daniel Gaskin. Yes to 10P and 10Q. Yes on 10C. No to 10S. There are some statues in Worcester we should be ashamed of and try to hide. That isn't one of them. Neither is the museum. No on 10Z. Let's not give Creative 508 the Nady Committee fear-mongering treatment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the rules allow me to address misstatements made in the direction of certain counselors. The reference to 10S and the item regarding Major Taylor, there's nothing in the order that's asking anybody to hide anything. That's what was just stated. I saw it on social media. I see it here tonight being said. I just want to make sure the characterization of what my order is correct. Unless you can't read English, it clearly does not say anything about hiding any monuments.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak tonight? What's your name and city of residence?
David Webb, City of Worcester. Yes to traffic calming measures, the 25-mile limit, the overdue state of emergency. It's wild that we're holding things again. I thought our manager said that public safety was non-negotiable. Guess we have different definitions of public safety. 11I and 11K. By quoting certain rules together, this administration can make up the rules as it goes, so I'm looking forward to some clarity here. Yes to 11J, Spanish translation of the rules. Why doesn't this exist already, and why only to Spanish? 11T, asking for donations from schools for firefighter gear. Didn't we just increase police funding 9%? 12B, Y, and Z. Yes. Why can't we get trash bins? We're the second largest city in New England. Let's act like it. 23C, Create 508 is a great organization doing good work in the city, and I think you should leave it alone. A method to document spectrum complaints already exists at a state level, and it's better for people to report it directly to them because our city manager has made it clear that he doesn't listen to advisory boards. So let's not waste any time recreating 13D. Alternatively, a good idea, yes on 13G, creating a civic academy. It's very unclear who actually has the power or responsibility in this room. So a civic academy to educate people on various departments and services they provide is a great idea. 18A, quality of life. Did you know that there's 444 results for the term quality of life in the manager agenda for tonight? But nowhere does it mention that their role is displacing the unhoused community of Worcester. We fund them instead of actual resources. 23A, constables. This agenda item should be tabled again. The city has remained unable or unwilling to provide public records, but it would appear that the manager is not in compliance with existing ordinances. Updating them does not fix the harm this has caused. The court shut its doors to the public and does not protect residents, but you can. The interim chief claims that his hands are tied, even though he does the background check, and his officers provided the cuffs. Your hands are not tied. I think it's noteworthy that we have one counselor asking for recognition of someone who got Worcester into national headlines in the same meeting as a request to consolidate recognition of someone who did that in the 1800s. I visited the Major Taylor Museum this morning. It's lovely, inspiring, and I asked the friendly person at the front counter if they knew where they'd be moved to in the library or if anyone there wanted this. The answer was no and no. So no, let's not move the museum to the city building with recently increased police presence. However,
Okay, can you wrap up your comments, please?
yes, lastly, Elm Park. There's a pylon screwed to a bridge. So 13I, request for an update from Assistant Commissioner Antonelli Jr., as previously requested 3 years ago and 8 times since then. I'm with Bergman. This is ridiculous.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
David Webb, City of Worcester. 16H, guardrails on Cambridge Street. I agree with Marie Matano that that could be a dangerous intersection and the children should be protected. However, according to the expert from the city, a guardrail in this location would kill children. So I think people should watch the last traffic and safety hearing, especially when thinking about who might be responsible and negligent for any of the issues we're experiencing. 8GG, 8HH, yes. No to 8II, as I said in the traffic hearing, no to aggressive enforcement. As Chief Saucier said then, I'm sure there's a lot of white people that think police solve problems, but let's consider the data here. If enforcement helped this issue, it would have over the past years. 10B, new policies from the Parks Department. Seems about 2 decades overdue, but we're looking forward to seeing how equitable those aren't. 10G, yes, we need cooling centers, but we also need to start thinking about warming centers. 11A, yes, of course, let's pass the 25-mile-per-hour limit. I don't know how any rational, intelligent person could be against it or want to delay it, but not street by street. Let's not do what you did to the rental registry to the street limits. Progress here has been held up long enough. Yes, on 13A, supporting remove graduation requirement from the grade 10. The MCAS has always been horrible. I probably wouldn't have passed it without lots of help at that time. Standardized testing is crap, and we can have a moment to actually take a stand against it. Yes to 12A. I think a dashboard that makes it clear to the general public that our city management has left the entire LGBTQ plus and African advisory committees empty for a few years would be helpful. Yes on 12D. No on 12F. I don't think the city should bully WPI in private. If we're going to trade firefighter gear for tax breaks, it should be in public. 12J could go badly with the way the city is run, but in general, meeting with developers before they impact a neighborhood would prevent a lot of the issues we're running into and some of the things we're discussing tonight. 12K, absolutely, those crosswalks are horrible and very frequently used. 12S, yes, way better than the alternative. 15D, what a vague, redundant agenda item. I wonder what the Economic Development Committee actually does. Thanks.
Okay, seeing nobody else, anybody?
David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm unprepared, but I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes, and I guess I'm getting shut off if it's not. To be clear, I am against the concept of muting people at 2 minutes. With all due respect, you guys kind of ramble on for 5 to 10 minutes. I understand it is now being ended at 5 minutes, but if there was substantial content rather than storytelling and speaking while you figure out what you're getting to your point on your end, I would be more understanding of asking us to be expeditious. But with all due respect, you are not, so please understand that some of us might be long-winded. It's great that now that we're not in election season, we're back to using keys to the city to recognize people who've actually had a great impact. Also, thank you to everyone from Start on the Street. It is or was one of the absolute best things about the city. I think this council should consider what it could do to make it easier rather than prohibitive to run incredible, wonderful city gathering events like this. There were 7 drone uses, no crime prevented, no suspects located, no people actually helped. Sounds like a great proof of concept, but like many of the other tools, kind of perpetuates existing problems instead of resolving any. Yes, Councillor Russell's item about revisiting how we do the city charter. There are a lot of problems. We need to go a lot further than what he has proposed. We should reconsider if we need a city manager, if it's actually helpful, among what Councillor Russell is suggesting, maybe. Sorry, bear with me. I was expecting there to be more people talking. What time am I at, Mr. Mayor?
1:30.
Well, 17H, petition of Gordon Davis to request City Council, request Standing Committee on Public Safety investigate the issue of systemic racism and public safety with public hearings included, as tabled by Toomey on May 14th. Sounds like that might be worth looking into given everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is your name, see your residence, item numbers?
David Webb, City of Worcester. Before I forget, I'm here also in support of 13F, looking at the intersection of Fairmont and Hamilton. I know it can be conflicting to get 2 different city councilors to work together, but that's a pretty bad intersection and it's important to. So we want to be in enthusiastic support of 10K through 10T. I did not expect to get as many great recommendations from CMRPC as we have. But all of these are things that came up in the public comment meetings, and I especially would like 10K, a report concerning the negotiation between Worcester and Spectrum. Maybe we can have some improvement instead of constantly getting nothing improved there. 11A, the feasibility of local art and vendor market, replacing Start on the Street with something done by the city. Vehemently no. Like everyone else has said, leave it to the artists. 11D, request City Manager, Council, Parks Department, and 11E and 11F, all from Councilor Bergman. Thank you. Yes, let's assess the WRTA, assess the Parks Department, and figure out best practices for cars making right turns. Let's tell them what to do and maybe design it so they do it. 11B, like everyone else has said, it's kind of ridiculous, kind of prohibitive, kind of silly, kind of doesn't solve the point, kind of a waste of money, and we don't know how we're going to pay for it. It also, I would like to read this public notice that is now on these as of this week. Any member of the public may make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. That is, of course, the open meeting law. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair as to not interfere with the meeting. Also part of the open meeting law. I want to note that it was added this week after I sent an email to the clerk and chair regarding disruptive noises from a cell phone. So even if this is not in violation of the First Amendment, to effectively say, part of what I want to say here is you're stopping people from bringing in tripods. You're stopping people from, you're making it more and more prohibitive for people to actually document and record this. This is new, and for the same reason that the busking fee was unconstitutional, this might be. If you don't make people silence their phones like you didn't last week, you can't make me be less disruptive with my camera. Have a great rest of your evening.
Okay. Name, city of residence, and item number.
David Webb, City of Worcester. I am here primarily in support of item 8K. As you've heard, and as you will continue to hear tonight, the city did not act equitably when it distributed those funds. I'm going to read from worcestermass.gov/ARPA. Overall goals and priorities set by the city and federal government, including but not limited to those most disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially low-income communities and communities of color. We may not be upset with any of the organizations that received money, but once again, the city has demonstrated that it does not uphold to its stated values. It does not demonstrate the values it claims to have. When it says we are Worcester with lots of good Worcester faces, it doesn't actually mean that all of them are Worcester. It simply means it's going to continue prioritizing white homeowners. And as a further demonstration of that, I'd like to draw your attention to tabled items, another place that the Worcester City Administration demonstrates its priorities. We have rent control, tabled in 2019. We have COVID-19 vaccination bill, tabled 2021. We have a different ARPA thing from 2021 when you guys didn't do what you should have then. We have stuff on the school. We have prioritizing the WRTA, the ecotarium. There's a lot of things that would be good. I'm sorry. Request city manager work with appropriate departments and stakeholders to establish an office of housing stability in an effort to prevent the involuntary displacement of city residents who are in the process of being evicted or at the risk of losing their housing, as well as to enact policies to combat displacement, homelessness, and enhance tenants' rights. You know, this is just another one of those, like, if you look at all of the problems we've got in Worcester today and you think, well, what could we have done differently? Look through the tabled items. Worcester demonstrates its priorities, and it's ugly. David Webb, City of Worcester. 10J, free parking at the library. Yes, duh. Regarding item 12D, Mayor Petty's petition to create a small business task force. A little bit too little, too late. I'm for this, but it would be nice if you all listened to small business owners over the past decade instead of waiting until they're drowning and dying to do anything about it. Maybe also we could have had an efficient chamber of commerce that did more than raise money under the guise of picking up litter that you all don't provide a place for us to put. Regarding 10L, the proposed redundant and discriminatory practice of requiring naturalization papers from certain city councilors. I've talked in my public comment before about when this administration shows not just how it operates, but its priorities. Yikes. It seems like the only time the city is concerned about lawsuits is when threatened by religious organizations trying to preserve crisis pregnancy centers. This public stunt is blatantly unacceptable, self-promotional, and xenophobic. It's disgraceful that we're even discussing it because the clerk and law department have demonstrated many times with various progressive petitions that by citing rules 11 and 14 together, they can pretty much do whatever they want. Using these rules, they have denied letting the council vote on enunciation of agenda items from the chair, government transparency, clarity or enforcement on current constable laws, clarification from the Parks Department on rules for vendors, additional training for the Law Department, adopting recommendations made by our own advisory committee, which we've heard about today when City Manager Batista denied the people advocating for less spectrum, and my favorite, reviewing the solicitor for denial of constitutional rights. But Worcester Republican Committee can ask for naturalization papers? My only question this morning was this allowed by the clerks of the city solicitors prejudiced? But I contacted the clerk and they responded, citing their duty under Rule 9 to simply prepare the agenda based on the items that come into their office. You didn't do your duty under Rule 9 when it didn't allow a petition from former members of the Cable Commission. Didn't do your duty under Rule 9 when Gordon Davis asked you to look into practices of systemic racism. I don't know why you allowed this petition. Maybe to draw attention away from the full-body scanners getting its own secret discussion, or the city manager attempting to double down on his prohibitive grant practices by reiterating his emphasis to ensure commitment rather than ever taking accountability for his own harm. And it does seem to take the heat off you guys for the ARPA funds, so I'll give you that.
Can you wrap up your comments?
Yeah, almost done. I'm not just in opposition to 10L. I'm asking how 10L even made it this far, given that the petitioner themselves described it as free promotion. Why are you promoting xenophobia?
Thank you. We're doing petitions at the end, so if you speak now, you can't speak on your petition.
Can I speak for 30 seconds now on someone else's petition?
No, you can speak at that time.
When should I make the public comment regarding someone else's petition?
You can speak when you speak on your petition.
Okay, so then can I use all 3 minutes now?
No, you can do that at the petitions. We're going to name you. Okay. I just announced that earlier. Okay.
So if I want to speak on someone else's petition, there is not.
You can speak. You're allowed to speak one time during the meeting, so you can speak on at that time when your petitions come up.
Okay.
Okay. Department.
So I apologize for how wordy they are. I used a copy and paste loophole from the Republicans that they got through last time. But first and foremost, through the chair, not you, Councilor O'Hara, but you guys should be ashamed of yourselves. Sure. Okay, so regarding 18C, I had more than 50 outstanding public record requests. A few dozen of these have been escalated to the state, and the city was ordered to comply but hadn't. This isn't new. The city was sued for this in 2003 and 2022 and lost. Respectfully, if you didn't vote for this, it says don't, but you guys did, thank you. If our city manager does not uphold the will of the council, something that we've seen happen before, or if the records office doesn't obey the manager, our next step is to sue the city of Worcester for this very well-documented continuation of bad faith practices. Regarding 18R, formerly 9M, which there were 200 people to speak on last council meeting, ensuring the law department is familiar with constitutional law. I'm obviously biased, as an assistant city solicitor is defending the Worcester Police Department for taking away my Second Amendment rights over exercising my First. But there's many other examples. Notably, at the last council where you actually allowed public comment, we heard a dozen people speak about concerns about the 14th Amendment. These concerns were not shared by the law department, yet the 14th Amendment was an initial concern cited to avoid doing anything about deceptive practices from crisis pregnancy centers. There's the additional problematic history with busking, panhandling, and police practices. Considering that this city has had the same attorney for longer than some sitting councilors have been alive, and the inconsistent determinations over the past few years, I think it's worth making sure their framework on the basics is up to date. Regarding 18S, creating a review process for the law department that considers lawsuits against the city, constituent complaints, and many concerns raised by the public. I see the Worcester Law Department as where accountability goes to die, and given that there seems to be no oversight or enforcement to ensure that they're acting in the best interests of the constituents rather than functioning as a defense attorney for the administration, I'm petitioning to have a review process created. I believe I speak for many people when I say that we're tired of watching the city play accountability hot potato, constantly deflecting between the clerk, manager, and solicitor, almost never actually providing answers or accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Is your name, see your residence item number?
Thank you for not swearing more. Sorry, I'm shaken up. The owner of Piccolo's just spray painted my face out there. Yes to 8L, getting criteria for speed humps. Yes to 8Q and 8R. The tax seats were taken out. I'm so glad I wrote this ahead of time. Were taken in 2013 and 2014. It's been a decade. Yes, on 8U, and let's allocate funds so our librarians do not have to use punch cards. Regarding 10C, through the chair, you all want reports on this, but are not gas stations. Item 10A, a master transfer of the public's wealth into private pocket. The Chamber of Commerce and City Administration told us again and again that Polar Park would pay for itself. It looks like that's an outright lie. Not to belabor my points from last week, but can we make sure the city solicitor brushes up on contract law too? When a local homeowner owes the city a few $100, they put a lien on our house. But Larry Lucchino nets $50 million flipping the Woo Sox, and we get an $800,000 deficit. Not very best managed city in the nation of us, huh? On the same note, I am here in support of 8T. Our cost of living has increased consistently year after year, while our city has fewer resources than it did a decade ago. I think we all can see that the unhoused population of Worcester has increased, so I appreciate the UMass researcher who put this petition forward. Queen Street is staffed by abusive, problematic people. Smock homes are notoriously unsafe. The temporary winter shelter got unboarded today, but its 60 beds was woefully insufficient last year, more so this year, but our manager has acknowledged this. I learned that the shelter has a 6 p.m. curfew, so a large part of the unhoused community that's trying to get back on their feet is systematically excluded from this public comment. I talked to people yesterday and this morning, and they need bathrooms, places to charge their devices, and an increase in mental health services. The city needs to learn the phrase dual diagnosis and create centers that address both addiction and mental health. I'm wondering if there's any update from when the city council requested the city manager address the lack of public restrooms, especially considering that they don't seem to be a problem to provide them for ice skaters. Also, while I'm here, I would love an explanation why that was the first time I've seen cops without body cameras on in the past 7 weeks.
Thank you. Please,
Freedom is not free.
go ahead, next. Next speaker.
Yes to 10B, David Webb, City of Worcester. Yes to 10B, 10C, and 16H. Regarding 9H and 9I, is this city really about to regulate massage parlors and spas more than it ever did deceptive crisis pregnancy centers? Conservative values in full view, I guess. On the same note, not to belabor my points from the last 3 meetings, but can we make sure the city solicitor brushes up on employment law too? By automatically paying our manager more than anyone else, it seems we may be in violation of Massachusetts employment law, not just common sense. Worcester isn't safe, it isn't organized, it certainly isn't well managed. It just keeps the powerful powerful. I am here in strong opposition to item 14A, not just for your failure to condemn political violence after my civil rights were violated not 50 feet from here, but for letting your conservative values direct this city. Through the chair, to Eric Batista, I know none of this is your fault, but it is all your responsibility. You acknowledge the responsibility, you articulate it, but it never actually turns into accountability. Your complacency with violence is concerning, and your priority on protecting the narrative is problematic. If you addressed systemic problems instead of social media posts, maybe things would actually be improving around here. The terms required to extend this contract tell us that you don't even want this responsibility. If you need more than 300,000 reasons to help us, then maybe Worcester should take this opportunity to do what it should have done in the first place, an actual search. Furthermore, if WPD can't protect people at a place they're assigned to be or arrest someone for hate crime in our city hall, then what is their point? I just want to get out there and say, I know I'm obnoxious, but violence is wrong. Violence is wrong. And it's really disappointing that the majority of this council cannot agree with that. I want to be proud of the city. Right now, I'm ashamed of it. This is not an administration I can be thankful for this week.
Next speaker.
David Webb, City of Worcester. Congratulations to our esteemed city solicitor on his anticipated retirement. I appreciate that it was announced right after this body voted to implement a review process, a few days after another federal lawsuit was filed, right before the Department of Justice report came back with this horrifying report, just before the ACLU said that this administration broke law in silencing Gaza protesters at its October 22nd meeting. Good timing. His 37 years of impact has protected deceptive medical centers, prevented police accountability, and kept DEI a non-existent priority.
Is
I'm
that on
looking
the,
forward.
that's not on the agenda, I'm sorry.
This is regarding 10A and 22B.
10A, wait, he's not on the agenda, though.
I'm looking forward to the next chapter for Worcester. I hope that we do not simply do the Worcester thing of promoting the person who's done the job under them for the past 8 years by appointing either Deb Forcier or Alexandra Kalkunis. Like the city manager or chief of police positions, this position needs to be filled with an actual search. Yes on orders 14B and C. Yes on 14D, E, F, and G. These orders will highlight a few different systematic problems within our city. 14J, sure, whatever, amend it to candlepin and let's not waste much time on this. 14I, why do we need to ask our manager to provide metrics for effectiveness or clarity on whose responsibility it is to evaluate programs? Wouldn't a well-managed city already have this information readily available? Which brings me to 10A and 22B. Councilor Morris Bergman and Mayor Joe Petty's order to extend Manager Batista's contract, which, as I understand it, is longer with a higher severance and still no clearly defined expectations or goals. We've given him 2 years. This city is not safer. It's not cleaner. It's not more diverse. It really doesn't seem like it's on its way towards accountability or progress. I implore this administration to learn from its mistakes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bear with me, I wrote this before the entire police union showed up to defend the alleged rapists among them. Bear with me. My name is David Webb. I'm a resident not really a proud resident anymore. I'm an ashamed resident in the city of Worcester. We're the second largest city in New England. Let's start acting like it. Let's set an example. That means accepting responsibility, admitting our harm, and changing our systems so that we don't constantly exploit our citizens. For Worcester to improve, we need to be able to admit to harm, and I see Petition 7X as an opportunity to do just that. I am also, of course, in support of 10C through 10H and 7Z through 7DD. I'd like to particularly note 7EE, adding mental health services to sites with services for the unhoused community. This is a fantastic agenda item, and I'm glad to see it on the agenda. I'm in opposition to 7W. Tonight's meeting is yet another example of a city council agenda where we have both a request for the solution as well as a demonstration of the problem. Brought to us from the people who compared Mayor Petty to Hitler regarding actual public safety, we have a petition to be rape apologists who deflect instead of listen, who always demand more proof instead of ever simply believing the victim. What a great way to show exactly what roles the police unions play when it comes to accountability. I'm also not a fan of 9A, extending the city manager's contract. After I was attacked right outside this chamber by someone who has donated to most of this council, our city manager lied, claiming that there's not a practice of having police at these meetings, ironically this week, and claimed that the officers who were supposed to be there had left to file reports. According to a public records request, those reports do not exist. In the same misleading statement, Manager Batista said he was confident that the Worcester Police Department will be able to bring about justice. That hasn't happened, but really why? How? Why? At this point, why would any intelligent person or our city manager be confident in the city of Worcester or its police department to bring about justice? Maybe he needs to reread the report that was released 5 hours after his new attorney's statement. Because the city manager hasn't communicated with the Human Rights Commission since April. There are recommendations from the Board of Health that were made in 2020 that haven't been fulfilled. And in the 2 years since the Department of Justice launched its investigation, Councilor Kate Toomey, chair of the Safety Committee, hasn't had one meeting to discuss the matter. If half the people who showed up tonight gave a we wouldn't be in this position.
Okay.
David Webb, City of Worcester. I know Worcester likes Catholic dads, and it's great that he's representative of the Latino community, but we need a city manager who defends reproductive rights, who advocates for equity, and who doesn't play nicely with the police union when it comes to findings of systemic abuse of power. I appreciate that this is supposed to be a procedural quick meeting, but believe there's an opportunity for our representation here. I think we all know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Promoting the person trained by the last person to interim, then giving them the actual job with another raise is the Worcester way. It's not really working for the people of the city. It's possible that the city manager and I can never be on the same page. Their job is to maintain the systems running the city, while I'm advocating for some of these systems to be dismantled and rebuilt equitably. In the past few weeks, the American Civil Liberties Union and the Department of Justice have reiterated to this administration something its constituents have been saying for a long time. Our police department is problematic. The city acts unconstitutionally. Letting our solicitor go would be a great first step if it wasn't followed by a coordinated disinformation campaign and no indication of actual responsibility being taken. Our city manager understands people need to cooperate to get things done, but has not cooperated with the Human Rights Commission or many other different organizations that represent the city. He has not taken action on the problematic Parks Department. I know he inherited most of these problems from his predecessor, and all things considered, maybe he's doing a good job, but we don't know because there are not metrics or standards or goals or anything to determine that. All we have to go on is the past 2 years and his word. And I don't think Worcester is better now than it was 2 years ago, and I don't think he's held to his word. This past Wednesday, the Department of Justice explained that there is reasonable cause to believe in a pattern of practice of misconduct that violates the Constitution. This was an investigation into the City of Worcester and the Worcester Police Department. Not just the Worcester Police Department, the City of Worcester and the Worcester Police Department. The pattern of practices of unlawful conduct compromises Worcester's ability to provide public safety services. Worcester doesn't have the ability to provide public safety services constitutionally or effectively, according to the Department of Justice. A well-managed city is one that is designed to be responsive to the natural environment, has a desirable public realm, and supports social needs. The city is none of those. I believe less supportive and less responsive and less desirable than it was 2 years ago. He might be kind, considerate, and passionate.
Wrap up your comments, please.
I'm almost done. He might believe some victims. He might be against violence. He might even believe in telling the truth. But we need to center impact, not intent. I recently got
Thank you
involved
very
in
much.
Worcester politics
Your time is up,
after
please.
watching him defend
Your
justice
time is up,
allow
please.
crisis pregnancy
Your
centers.
time is up, please.
We need
Thank
someone
you.
who is a man of their word and actually gets.
Thank you.